comes Dr. David Anderson. He is a scientist and flight test engineer, founder of a company called the Time Travel Research Center. This company has pioneered the development of a time warp field technology. Did you hear me? Pioneered the development of a time warped field technology that is demonstrating that real time control is much closer than most of us realize. His company and research association are dedicated exclusively to advancing the science, technology, and research that will deliver practical time control for us all. Here is Dr. David Anderson.
We discovered a relationship between time and energy. And is that we've found a way to create a time dilation at a much lower energy level. That is the bottom line foundation of our entire research.
A time dilation at a much lower energy level. All right, let's hit it one at a time. When you define the term time dilation,
essentially meaning that the rate at which time passes can be sped up or slowed down is probably the simplest way to put it.
Time can be sped up or slowed down.
Correct.
Effectively resulting in time travel?
Eventually, yes. I mean, right now, what we're doing is we can create a small, self-contained, what we call time warp field, and within that field, we can accelerate the rate at which time passes or slow down the rate at which time passes relative to the time rate outside of the field.
How do you know you're doing that?
Well, essentially, the theory that we introduced, it's a theory I introduced back in 1988. It's called time warp field theory. It's a discussion, an approach, and a technique that allows the creation of a field that will allow you to accelerate or slow down the rate at which time passes. The generator that we use to create that field is called a time warp field generator.
And by what means does it do that? In other words, what kind of field? Are you generating... I'm going to just take a stab in the dark here. Some sort of electromagnetic field. Is electromagnetics, or can you not talk about this?
No, I can talk about certain characteristics of it.
All right, is electromagnetic energy involved?
Yes, it is. I mean, in our application, we use electromagnetics, but not necessarily in the same way that many people might expect us to say. I mean, our generator is very similar to, I guess, what I'd call a plasma generator. More of like a plasma generator that people will be familiar with in a high-energy physics experiment.
So you're saying you use an electromagnetic field to contain plasma?
Well, actually, that's pretty close. We have an antenna that induces what we call a high-speed rotational magnetic field, electromagnetic field in the core. Then we have an injector system that establishes a special environment. And then we use a high-energy laser array to induce the time warp field. So there is an electromagnetic component, but it's not. When we talk about time control technology, we quickly move to the Montauk project, the Philadelphia project.
You betcha. I was going to just stop you right there, and I was going to say, do you realize what you just described is so close to what I've interviewed people supposedly involved in the Philadelphia experiment. They gave technical details. And they had large electromagnetic fields along with rotating RF fields. Yeah. And that's starting to sound an awful like what you just said.
Actually, not completely. We do have a rotational electromagnetic field, but it is a minor part of what we do. A critical part of what we do is an injector system where we establish we induce a gas reagent into the core of our generator, and then we use a high-energy laser array. That reagent in the laser array is really what initiates and controls the field. However, it cannot be initiated without the electromagnetic field. Once we open up a time warp field, that electromagnetic field, the rotating electromagnetic field we have, really tapers off. We use it for control, but it's not as important after the field is opened. As within the Philadelphia experiment and the stories of the Montauk project, that was a key critical element. Time travel to actually control or alter time rates would take a massive amount of energy.
Yes.
We have an antenna configuration. We introduce this rotational electromagnetic field. It's very large. It's probably about 7 meters high. The antenna configuration itself, so about 20 feet. The time warp field generator itself, we have injectors that inject a gas reagent that help us create a very large amount of energy. When we initiate a field, we require a lot of energy.
And you're talking just about an electromagnetic field, right?
Yes, this is rotating electromagnetic field. We set that environment up, we inject a gas reagent, and then we have a laser array of 12 high-power lasers around the core of the field.
Yes.
And we use those lasers to excite the reagent to create the amount of energy to open up the field. Once the field is opened up, the power on the lasers is pulled back a little bit. The rotational electromagnetic field becomes a less important component. Initially, though, the electromagnetic field is important to make sure we have a stable field. And
so, and then all of this is, you actually have an antenna. You load this into some sort of radiator, some sort of antenna.
Yeah, actually, the antenna itself, we have 16 elements around the generator that help create the rotational field in a way that will contain. I'll just say contain the energy better as we open up the field.
What have you actually created? I understand you're using the rotating magnetics, you're using the lasers, and then you have created something, and you can back off the energy levels, and yes, the creation continues. What did you just create, Doctor?
What we created was, let's just say, it's an area within space where within that area, and it's a spherical field, within that spherical field is an area where time rates will pass slower or faster depending on how we set up the field.
Good Lord.
It's very self-sustaining. When we create a time warp field, we can, I'll say it simply, we can adjust the time rate inside the field. We can speed it up maybe to about a factor of 3 to 4 times the time rate outside of the field, so we can actually make time pass 3 times faster inside the field, or we can slow it down. When we slow down too far, the field becomes unstable.
October 28, 1943 was the date of one of the most significant scientific experiments in history, the so-called Philadelphia experiment. The goal was to make ships invisible to radar. But the result exceeded all expectations. Placed in a powerful electromagnetic field, the U.S. Navy destroyer, Eldridge, disappeared not only from the screens, but also from our reality. The ship materialized once again hundreds of miles from Philadelphia at the military base of Norfolk, Virginia, with a crazed crew on board. All records of the tragedy have been kept secret. But there was a rumor linking the experiment with the great inventor Nikola Tesla, who supposedly made all the necessary calculations and drawings and provided generators that were used for the teleportation of the Eldridge.
We've arrived now finally at the home of Preston Nichols, famous for his work at the Montauk Project. Crazy, mad scientist, and we're about to enter the lair of Preston Nichols. And this place is just loaded with equipment. Every single room is full of experiments, things from his experiments. And as many of you know, Preston Nichols is the scientist from the Montauk Project, and he was the one that was operating the trip chair. Nichols, for allowing us to do this interview today in your wonderful laboratory. And you are so well known for your work with the Montauk Project, but also I know that you're working with the military. Mm-hmm. It was a top secret project. Oh, yes. But you also had off-planet beings working with you as well, mm-hmm. Aliens. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. We developed the electromagnetic bottle to hide any sort of a ship in. Up to that point, it was thought that the mind of man had no sensitivity to electromagnetics, but it evolved into essentially a mind control device, which is what they really. This machine had the capability of generating that time, generating a vortex, different space and time. And that's what the Montauk Project eventually evolved into, a time machine. And yes, it worked. It didn't work all that well, but it worked. many people got lost, but it did work. And
which Stargate have you seen? There's many Stargates, no?
I'm talking about the design. The quantum physics I deal with is the physics of electrons and light going between the parallel realities. We have 7 parallel realities, which we're one of. This physical reality we can touch.
Oh, you mean like 7 different Earth worlds?
Whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the quantum physics I work with. Now, in that, I went into a very, very deep study of electrons between the conductive state, which is a particle, and the vacuum state, which is a wave. You look at it as the particle is a little ball, and when it gets launched into a vacuum, since there's no atoms to jump from to, it unrolls itself and becomes like a sheet traveling through the vacuum, a massless, thicknessless sheet traveling. This wave aspect of the electron is very special. When you get an electron wave, it literally floats in hyperspace. Now, if you can take the space that the wave is floating in and twist it, spin it, rotate it, you can now create a vortex. That vortex will go through all parallel realities. That's contingent to us here. And if you take the age-old pentode vacuum tube and you bias it correctly with the voltages on the element, you can literally take that wave that's in the tube and spin it. And it forms like a vortex, a quantum singularity, a white hole, whatever you want to call it, and connects the signal flow through all 7 realities.
Oh my God. Did you get that? Look at this. Look at this. Tonight, like I said before, there are reports of time travel here, mind control, also alien activity. They actually said there was a scientist that actually said that he had worked with an alien life form on some kind of top secret projects for the Army. So we're standing directly in front of the radar that might just make time travel possible. Those lines might have gone 8 miles underground to the time control machine, all the way up to that radar.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It really
Literally,
does.
doesn't it?
Like
right?
they put something in there, they lock it up with that,
It spins
and then
around and then just disappears.
send it out. This is the other side of that time traveling device.
In 1995, while conducting research with his step-up transformer, Nikola Tesla had his first indications that time and space could be influenced by using highly charged rotating magnetic fields. Part of this revelation came about from Tesla's experimentation with radio frequencies and the transmission of electrical energy through the atmosphere. Tesla's simple discovery would, years later, lead to the infamous Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk time travel projects, but even before these highly top-secret military programs came about, Tesla made some fascinating discoveries on the nature of time and the real possibilities of time travel with these experiments in high-voltage electricity and magnetic fields.